Marvel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season finale, beginning of the end. It was a great season finale for the show. It was really, really action packed, and I love the great action scenes they had in this one. And ultimately, I'm excited for season two, which fortunately the show was renewed. So we are going to get to see some of these storylines really play out. And the one I'm most excited for, without a doubt, is who are S.H.I.E.L.D's parents, and is she a mutant? Is she superhuman? What is she? And what are her parents? And just everything that's involved with that. That's the storyline I really hope is the main focus of season two. And odds are it'll be some other supervillain that's the main storyline, but I really hope they focus really, really deeply on her backstory and they don't just give us little bits and pieces like they did in this season, which I understand for this season because it was the first, so they had to establish it. But in this episode, they flat out show the woman in the flower dress go to her father and give him the picture. At least I assumed it was his father based on the silhouette that we get to see. It didn't look like a woman to me, so I just assumed it was her father. And the weirdest thing that happened in that scene was when he was looking at the picture, it looked like blood was dripping off of his hand, and of course it wasn't really lit well in the room because it was the premiere of that character, so it probably isn't even going to end up being the actual actor. But it's dimly lit, so you can't really tell what everything is, but it really looked like blood to me from the little bit of light that was in that room. And it makes me curious as to who her father or who her parents are, really. I don't know if her mother is technically still alive, but as the woman in the flower dress put it, I think it was in the last episode or the episode before, she mentioned how Sky's parents were monsters that were basically tearing up this town or something weird like that. So it just leads me down the path of thinking that Sky is, once again, she's something that isn't human. She has to be supernatural in some way. And I just can't wait to see how that is and how her parents, I guess, lost her. I'm not sure. I mean, these are the questions that we need answered. I don't know if her parents gave her up or if they lost her. And I would assume they lost her because of the woman in the flower dress telling the story of how these monsters tore up this place looking for a child. I would assume that Sky was taken from them because maybe there's some weird thing that activates that sort of mutant gene within her, and that's what transforms her into what her parents actually are. And whoever the shield agent was that ended up being killed off knew that, and they tried to save Sky so that she could stay seemingly human. So we'll have to wait and see. But as far as this episode goes, it was a great wrap up to the season. It was a great way to end the whole Hydra storyline, and I'm very curious to see how things continue for Shield and how things get rebuilt, because I thought that was going to be one of the big things, that Shield was just going to be destroyed. There would be no more Shield, but as Nick Fury said, he basically had a way to rebuild Shield, and he gave it to Coulson. So now Coulson will be Director Coulson, and he will direct Shield, and it'll be interesting to see him be the director of Shield, but he'll also continue being Agent Coulson, who goes out in the field with his team. And he probably won't really rebuild Shield until the end of season two, maybe, because I don't think it's just going to be like, hey, come here, we're going to rebuild. So it'll probably take all of season two, and then season three it might actually get rebuilt, because around that time, by the time season three would end, that's when we'll actually be getting like Avengers 2 and stuff like that. So they'll drop it in here and there, like Shield's coming back, and this is how we're gonna get the Avengers back together. And of course, they'll learn that he's alive again, and everyone will too. So that'll be interesting to see. And that's one of the things I'm most excited for, is that people are gonna find out that he's actually alive again. So we're gonna have to wait for season two for that type of stuff. But it was just a great episode. We had Nick Fury in it, and he had his comedic moments with Coulson, which were pretty funny. He saved Fitzsimmons, and that was a really good part of the episode. And I love their entire moment in the ocean. I knew they would escape, of course, but it was just a really cool scene. They're just trapped, and they have no idea what they're gonna do to escape, and then they figure some things out. And if I remember it right, Fitz is the guy and Simmons is the girl. Fitz, he broke his arm, and he knew that only one of them could escape, and he wanted to save Simmons, and he was finally able to tell her that he actually liked her more than just a friend. And one thing that has me worried is that when Simmons actually goes and she meets the team at the end of the episode when they're at their new secret base. She's there by herself, of course, and I thought it was fairly simple. He could still be recovering. But what made me worried is when Sky asked if Fitz was okay, and she said, "Please tell me he's okay." Simmons doesn't say he's okay. She just says he's alive, and it seemed like she was very specific because she could have just said he's okay. But he could be in a coma right now. He could be anything. That could have just been her first reaction. Excuse me. That could have just been her very first reaction to say he's alive. I don't want to give you guys the specifics and sort of tear down this happy moment that we're having, but he's alive. So we're gonna have to wait and see exactly what happened to Fitz and whether or not he's gonna be the same that he was. And I hope he is, and I'm sure he probably will be. But anything could happen because he was without oxygen, as Nick Fury said, for a pretty long time. Swimming up 90 feet isn't exactly 2 seconds, so we'll have to wait and see how he was affected by this episode and what happened to him underwater. But hopefully he'll come back at least within a couple of episodes and he'll be back to full health. And I think his character coming back or waking out of a coma, if he is in one, that'll be a great way for them to keep Ward in this show, because in this episode we see him change so much from the character he normally is, because he dealing with Garrett now being able to see the universe, as he puts it. Ward thinks he's losing his mind and he doesn't really get any orders from Garrett because Garrett pretty much has everything he wants. He can see everything, he almost knows everything. It's weird. And he really is almost the clairvoyant that he claimed to be in the beginning of the season. And Ward has no idea what to do. He has no real direction or drive. And then when Garrett gets killed off or he gets defeated, Coulson tells him, you have to figure out who you're going to be without Ward telling you what to do. And it'll be interesting to see how his character changes. And I'm sure they're going to keep him in the show. I don't think a character who was a main part of this series is just going to go to prison and it's just like he's in jail for the rest of the series now. He'll be in there. He has to be in there, at least in cameos for the first couple of episodes. And I think Fitz, having had that drive to prove that Ward was still a really good person, will come back in season 2. He'll go and talk to him while he's in prison. Like, I trusted you. I tried to tell everyone that they were wrong, that you were actually still a good person. And Sky will probably go to him too, and maybe everyone will. Who knows? But I think he'll be in there, and he'll probably escape somehow. I don't know if Hydra will help him get out of prison because, of course, he was working with Ward, so I'm sure that kind of spread around. Like, hey, Ward is working with Hydra, and Garrett is working with Hydra, and he's really done a lot of damage to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ward works under him, so the word could have spread really easily. Ward really works for Hydra, and they might be trying to say like, hey, you worked with this guy who really helped out Hydra, we're going to help you out so that you can help us back because you were his protege. So that could happen, or he could just escape from some random supervillain busting out of prison. We'll have to wait and see for season 2, and I could be wrong, he could just be out of the show, but I don't think they do that because the characters in the show have such a connection to him. Even if it's bad, they wouldn't just not go to the prison and ever see him again. They're going to express their concerns about what he did to them and stuff like that, because that's just what happens. You go and yell at the people that make you mad, especially when they tried to kill you, and you'll be mad about that. But his character is going to be very different in season 2 if he really does come back in a big way and not just through cameos. But it was interesting to see his real change in this episode where he was just lost and he was freaking out about Garrett because he thought he was losing his mind, saying he could see the universe, and him drawing those weird symbols on the glass door and all that stuff. And it was cool how that tied into a lot of things, especially the symbols tying Garrett and Coulson together, which I believe they were tied together. Garrett met through the GH23 or whatever it was called, because of course Coulson died, so he was brought back to life using the serum, and Garrett was about to die and he was saved using the serum. And it could be because of the whole fact that it's DNA from an alien and that's how they're really connected. But whatever these symbols are, I think they have to do with that alien species, and I don't know if it's some sort of map to the galaxy or blueprints. It seemed like blueprints, but I feel like it's so much bigger than that. It could just be like a super crazy weapon, but considering Garrett was drawing all these things on this door, and then at the end of the episode, Coulson drew all these symbols on the wall, and they were he used circles as well as diamonds, and I think Garrett only used circles. I could be wrong about that, but it seemed like Coulson's version was slightly different. Who knows what that stuff could be about and how it could connect to these alien creatures or what it's even about. It could be something totally different, but I think it's a form of that alien DNA sort of fusing into their brain because who really knows how that DNA affects them in the long term. So we'll have to see, and of course Sky could be involved in that as well if she comes across it. It'll kind of give us a hint as to whether or not it is the actual alien DNA that's doing it, because if she sees it and then it kind of randomly triggers something in her brain and it makes her start doing symbols, that'll kind of give us our answer as to whether or not it's the actual alien DNA that's making them draw these symbols. But that was the cliffhanger they left off on, so it's obviously a pretty big deal, and they had a few cliffhangers in this episode as far as what they're going to do for season 2. But Coulson in the end of this episode, it made me curious. It's not the thing I'm most excited for, as I mentioned, but it's the one they left off on, so it's obviously going to be important. And I'm excited to see how that plays out, especially with him working towards fixing S.H.I.E.L.D. and bringing that back together. What is that going to do with his brain, and how is that going to change who he is as far as drawing these weird symbols? And is he going to be seen doing these symbols, and what is that going to change for the team, and all types of weird dynamics. But I'm excited to see how that plays out, and of course I really want to see what happens with Sky. That's, like I said, I'm most excited for that. But her parents are something, she's something, and hopefully we get the actual answer to that somewhere in season 2 and they don't wait until the last minute. And even if it is in the season finale, at least in season 2, if we get the answer, that's all that really matters. But I'm loving the cliffhangers, and I love the sort of fake cliffhanger where Garrett actually burst out of the little box they put him in because he actually healed from the rocket blast, and he was talking about how they say you have to cut off the head and stuff, and he puts on the armor, he has it fix his body up and stuff, and he's like, with this now I'll be unstoppable, and then Coulson just blows him away and he evaporates. And initially I thought it was some random villain or someone with superpowers, and they just blew him away like, you're not about to do anything, I'm about to take over. But it was just Coulson, and it was just a silly scene where he just blew him up and didn't even talk about it. He was just like, hey guys, it was in here the whole time, the little I guess ray device. And then he just walks out like it was nothing. I love that scene. It was so silly, but it was a great sort of misdirect in the episode. And it was just really silly and fun, but it was a great episode. Love the action scene between Ward and May, and they were in the perfect spot where they're doing construction, of course. So if you even fell on the wall, you go right through it. But it was so funny watching May just beat Ward up. Like when he was on the ground and she like kicked his head into a board, she nailed his feet. She did the spin kick to knock him out, but she really beat him up. He got like some punches and stuff, and he tried to put her on the table with the buzzsaw, but then she did like the thing where she put the little pipe on it and it flew and hit him in the face. She just won that whole fight, and it was just a really good fight scene because of course they were just going through walls left and right, but it was a great scene. The only thing I wish they did in this episode was have Trip actually have a really big moment with either Garrett or Ward, because he had such a close connection to them, and they bring it up multiple times in previous episodes because the other team members kind of still worry about him as to whether or not he's still working for Garrett, and he had a huge connection to Garrett just like Ward did, and of course it was different because Ward's life was actually saved by Garrett, and I'm sure Trip just worked with him, but he still had a big connection to Garrett as well as Ward, so it would have been cool to see him have a actual heartfelt conversation with one of them at least, but that doesn't end up happening, sadly. And of course it will never happen with Garrett. It could happen with Ward in season 2, and that could be one of the big things they do, but once again we'll have to wait and see. And I do like his character. He's kind of like Coulson, where he's really sarcastic, but I think he's slightly less sarcastic than Coulson, and he's a little bit more, he's slightly more towards the action-oriented side, but he is a fairly funny character, and I like him. And it's cool to see that he's going to be the new person who basically replaces Ward. He's pretty much been a part of the team since the whole Hydra thing happened, and he found out that he was like, oh crap, my mentor is working for Hydra, so I'm gonna work with the only couple of people I know that are actually good guys. So it'll be cool to see him be a part of the team in season 2. And I like his character, and I hope we get some more Howling Commando stuff out of him, even though it'll just be little nerdy references here and there for people like me who enjoy that stuff. It'll be cool to get some little background on him, and it'll be cool to get some just simple character development out of him, and see what happens to his character as time goes on. But great addition to the team. Excited for that. Nick Fury being in the episode was good. Of course, a lot of people knew because they announced that Nick Fury was going to be in it, and him letting Coulson take over S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be really interesting. And he kind of just leaves off fairly similar to what he did before. I try not to spoil anything, but he leaves off fairly similar, so we don't really know where Nick Fury is going or what he's doing. But he's, as he put it, he's trading his bird's eye view for 2 feet on the ground. So he's off doing his own thing. He most likely will be in the Avengers 2 because he's Fury, so it just makes sense. But he's off doing his own thing. It was cool to have him in this episode and have his moments with Coulson where they're just silly together. Like, none of their moments were really serious, except for the very first scene where they actually see each other. And then that ends with him pulling out the gun from the Avengers, and it's just like, oh, look what I have behind my back. And he just hands him this giant gun, like it was just there the whole time. And it was kind of like in a cartoon where it's obviously nothing there, and then they just pull something out of nowhere. And it was just really funny to see that. And he was just like, here's something to help. This packs quite a punch. And he gives him the giant gun. But it was cool to see him in this episode. It was cool to see him save Fitz and Simmons. And I'm curious to see if he's in season 2 somewhere, if he decides to come back or do whatever he wants to do. But it was cool to have him in this episode, and it was a great season finale. I was glad to see that the woman in the flower dress survived, because I really like her character more than, like, she's my favorite villain character. She's sort of like, I don't know if I want to say anti-hero, because the talk she had with Garrett really made her seem like she was really just a good guy, but at the same time, she obviously isn't. It just showed how her drive had nothing to do with taking over anyone or killing anybody. It's just the evolution of humans and how we could change and get superpowers and stuff like that. So I'm really curious to get more out of her character, because I really, really like her character. Even though she's so mysterious, we don't have anything about her really. But I'm excited to see her continue on, and of course she once again is going to have ties to one of the big storylines, because she knows S.H.I.E.L.D's father, and probably both her parents, depending on how things are going there. But she went back, and she obviously had some history, because she said, I know you never expected to see me again. So, excuse me, we'll probably get some backstory on how she initially met S.H.I.E.L.D's parents, how she found out about S.H.I.E.L.D, how long she's known about S.H.I.E.L.D, and all sorts of stuff. And she'll be probably one of the biggest points in S.H.I.E.L.D's storyline for season 2, because she's the one who holds all the secrets. And once again, that'll probably be a good way for them to keep Ward in the show, because Skye will probably go and talk to him and say, like, hey, you mentioned history and secrets that I want to know, so talk to me. And that'll probably happen in season 2. But great season finale, great action, had its silly moments. Excited to see what happens in season 2. They have a new base with Patton Oswalt again, and I guess his clone. I just figured it was his clone, because he didn't say that they were twins or anything. He was just like, yeah, he died. It was sad. So I think they're just clones in all these secret bases, but we'll have to see. But great season finale, and I cannot wait for season 2. So comment below, let me know what you guys saw of this season finale. Favorite parts, least favorite parts, and of course, with some of the little cliffhangers that they gave us, with the really only being 2 big ones. What do you guys want to see for season 2? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.